And now to the major tornado outbreak in the Deep South. 30 reported twisters from Louisiana to South Carolina, at least 20 people killed, thousands of homes destroyed. One twister ripping through parts of Georgia, stripping the trees here, overturning homes. An hour away, this woman and her baby walking through the wreckage of a farm. ABC's Gio Benitez is in Georgia tonight.
Tonight, a desperate search for the missing in the rubble. The massive devastation seen from the sky. From Mississippi to Georgia, 30 reported tornadoes over the weekend. One of the hardest hit areas, Albany, Georgia.
I think that's a tornado.
A tornado barreling through, leaving at least 4 dead. And still missing tonight, a 2-year-old who officials say was swept away during the tornado.
We have a lot of people that have been separated from their families, that have no homes, no food, no warmth, and no hope.
It happened so fast. All you heard was shh, and then the noise, and then everything just started coming down.
At least 20 people killed across the South. But in the midst of this nightmare, perhaps one bright moment. Your kitten was missing? Lashery Richardson finds her missing cat. What do you do now?
Take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
And David, just take a look behind me. There is so much rebuilding to be done here, but everyone here tells us what's most important are lives, and they want all of those missing to be found safe. David?
Gio, thank you. And in the West tonight, flood watches for the California coast and winter weather advisories in at least 11 states. Days of heavy rain causing this mudslide in L.A., a piece of the hill right there, sliding down toward that car, moving it right into the street. Flash flooding in the hills east of the city, washing away this truck. Rescuers floating a raft over to it. The couple inside climbed.
A Christian university in Mississippi was also hit hard by those devastating tornadoes. William Carey University in Hattiesburg suffered extensive damage, but thankfully no one was killed. A school spokesperson says nearly all of the 30 buildings on campus were damaged and about 100 vehicles were totaled. But the university president says something remarkable happened at the chapel.
We had extensive damage to our beautiful Bass Chapel on campus, but the Bible on the pulpit is left undisturbed, and it's open to Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength in times of trouble.
The Word of God stands. William Carey University is accepting cash donations to help students replace their books, computers, as well as their vehicles.
Well, right now, the Trump administration is facing a dire warning from North Korea in its very first week. The North Koreans are threatening to, quote, pour further misery on the U.S., and a warning coming 49 years after North Korea captured a Navy ship. It's the USS Pueblo. This as South Korea warns that the North is developing nuclear weapons at an unprecedented pace. Gordon Chang is an Asia analyst and author of the book Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World, aptly titled, as we point out often. Gordon, so what is notable? We've heard from North Korea on and off over the last several years. Why do you think this particular warning is notable?
Well, this comes at the beginning of the Trump administration. The North Koreans obviously want to test what Trump's intentions are towards Pyongyang. And the other thing that's important about this is that the Chinese are helping the North Koreans. The Chinese have provided nuclear weapons technology, fissile material, all sorts of plans for mobile missile launchers and other things. And so basically we're facing a challenge, not just from Pyongyang, but from Beijing as well.
So in the best possible scenario, when you look at the best possible response from the United States with such a threat or an actual missile test, what would that look like?
Well, first of all, the United States needs to support South Korea, which is going through an impeachment crisis right now. The president, who is a strong U.S. supporter, is under fire. She probably will be removed from office. That jeopardizes plans for missile defense for South Korea. I think the United States needs to warn China, not only privately, but also in public. And we need to start sanctioning Chinese banks because they've been helping North Korea. And we have been shying away from enforcing our own laws. These banks should be unplugged from the global financial system. That would cause a shock, but at least we would be showing Beijing that we were serious about protecting ourselves from North Korea's missiles and nukes.
I want to go back to something we mentioned in the introduction, and that is the taking of the ship, the USS Pueblo. I think a lot of our viewers probably have forgotten about this. Tell us a little bit about what happened, why it's significant that North Korea is referencing it.
Well, the Pueblo was in international waters. The North Koreans took it. They imprisoned the crew for almost a year. We gave an apology to get it back. One of the crewmen died. Also, not long after that, in April 1969, the North Koreans shot down an Air Force EC-121 reconnaissance plane. 31 crew members died in that incident. That's the largest single loss of American life during the Cold War. The United States did nothing about that. We did nothing about the Pueblo. So the Chinese think that they can, for instance, interfere with U.S. aircraft and ships with impunity. They took the drone last month, and we didn't do anything about that either.
So you're saying it's a ripple effect. Donald Trump in the past has put many things on Twitter, and I'm wondering if you could take a look inside the minds of the North Koreans, if you would, Gordon. I know with your work, obviously your book, you've had time to think about this. If you're in North Korea and you're a North Korean leader and you see a tweet from Donald Trump that says this: North Korea just stated that it is in the final stages of developing a nuclear weapon capable of reaching parts of the U.S. It won't happen. That's what Donald Trump said. He went on to say in a following tweet that China has been taking out massive amounts of money and wealth from the U.S. in totally one-sided trade, but won't help with North Korea. Nice! Exclamation point. When you hear that, what do you think North Korea is hearing, and what do you think of that in general?
Yeah, North Korea is hearing a threat because what they say, Donald Trump says it's not going to happen. And he's not saying, oh, look, they can't do it. The North Koreans are saying, well, look, the United States is going to do something actively to prevent us from launching a missile.
Is that a good thing?
In a sense, if we back it up with actions, yes, it is, because it'll be an act of will, and we'll show not only the North Koreans, but also the Chinese and the Russians behind them that we are willing to defend ourselves. Now, China, when it sees all these tweets from Donald Trump, thinks that there's going to be a new response. They're going to try to challenge him as well because they want to knock him off his game. If they can do that early in his administration, they set the tone for 4 and maybe 8 years.
Wow, so you're really watching the next several hours, next several days, Gordon, from that the particular part of the world, North Korea and China.
Absolutely, absolutely, because this is where it all gets settled.
Well, we're going to see. We'll pay close attention as well. Great to have you in the program as always.
A million Americans, women, men, children among them, sending a message to President Trump on the day after his inauguration. Women leading marches across this country and really around the world. The size of the crowd surprising even organizers. But this question tonight: can they sustain the momentum, turning those marches into a movement? Here's ABC's Cecilia Vega tonight.
The message to those protesters tonight from the new press secretary: Donald Trump is fighting for them.
Welcome to your first day. We will not go away.
But the president himself sending mixed messages on Twitter, first saying he was under the impression that we just had an election. Why didn't these people vote? Then hours later, peaceful protests are a hallmark of our democracy. Those protesters out in force, exceeding the predictions.
Donald Trump has got to go.
From Boston to St. Louis to Denver to Phoenix. Lynn Del Pimo marching alongside her daughter and granddaughters.
I want them to understand that democracy requires your effort.
All around the world, from Frankfurt to Paris to London.
Having Trump is kind of significant in that it's galvanized hundreds of thousands of people like this.
And at the center of it all, right there in the shadow of the White House, 500,000 marchers and this sign, "I'm with her."
We are a movement. It's like we're not going to be stopped.
And Cecilia Vega with us live tonight. And Cecilia, so many families out there marching for different reasons. What are you hearing from organizers tonight about whether or not they can sustain this?
Well, David, they are hoping that this turns into a movement. They say they hope that with worldwide protests, that might inspire local action right here at home. David.
Cecilia Vega in Washington for us.
Well, President Trump has invited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to come to Washington. The call came amid speculation about the U.S. moving its embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Chris Mitchell brings us that story.
Trump invited Netanyahu to visit sometime in February during a phone call on Sunday between the two leaders. A statement from Washington said they had discussed ways to advance and strengthen the U.S.-Israel special relationship and security and stability in the Middle East. Netanyahu's office described the conversation as warm. The statements from both sides said they had discussed Iran. Absent from both statements was any mention of moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Earlier in the day, an Israeli television journalist tweeted that he had been told Washington would announce the move on Monday. But White House spokesman Sean Spicer said in a statement that they are at the very beginning stages of even discussing this subject. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat said he applauded Trump, and said it sent a clear message to the world that the U.S. recognizes Jerusalem as the indivisible capital of the State of Israel. The Israeli government breathed a sigh of relief following the inauguration. Now the waiting game continues to see how Trump will follow through on his pledges. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Last April, a small coal mining town was turned upside down by a traveling evangelist.
That's right. It began as a 3-day revival service, but grew from there. Reports came pouring in that a spiritual awakening began and the revival wasn't ending. Wendy Griffith traveled back to her hometown of Williamson, West Virginia, to bring us the story of this remarkable move of God.
There's a new sound coming forth from the hills of southern West Virginia. A sound many prophets have foretold, but haven't heard until now. For the past 3 weeks, the large sports complex in the small coal mining town of Williamson, West Virginia, has been filled to the rafters with people crying out for God. It all started when Tennessee evangelist Matt Hartley visited a local church for what was supposed to be a 3-day revival service, but it just kept going.
This is not man-made, charismatic, hyper-spiritual. This is the presence of God that is overwhelming us, that is being released upon hungry people that are tired of just stagnant Christianity and safe church. They want Jesus more than anything else, and that's why they're here.
Hartley also spoke at the local high school, where revival seemed to break out among the students.
400 to 450 students got saved at Mingo Central through Matt Hartley coming in and speaking at a voluntary prayer club meeting. It has just went from school to school, from youth group to youth group. Denominational barriers have just been cast down, and we've just had a great spirit of unity.
In the 1980s, this field house is where I helped cheer on the Williamson Wolfpack basketball team to victory. Great memories. But today, it's the only place big enough to hold what many say is the greatest spiritual awakening in southern West Virginia history.
We could not have done any of this if we wanted to. We've had so many different revival services, so many, special services, and nothing like this. This is true awakening.
Endicott says prayer plus desperation has paved the way for this spiritual breakthrough, especially among the young people.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I've never seen something like this happen where just young people get on fire, and it's really cool to come to church, and it's really cool to worship God, and nobody's judging you or saying anything about it because they're all with you. We're starting to have prayer circles at school before school, and we're reading and having Bible studies at school.
Others, like Erica Priest of Lenore, are seeing God answer very specific prayers.
My husband just got saved this morning. I've been praying for him for months, and he'll be baptized this Sunday.
He got saved this morning, on a Monday morning?
It's on a Monday morning at work with other men that are Christians that he works with.
Hartley believes the sound of revival, now being heard in these West Virginia mountains, has the potential to spread around the world.
I believe God has preserved this state for the end-time awakening that's coming to America. I believe that this is the beginning of where it happens, and it's going to spread as a wildfire throughout the nations of this world, that Jesus is going to be exalted, and the more Jesus is exalted, the more the river of God is going to flow, and we have not seen anything yet to what God is releasing.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Mingo County, West Virginia.
Christian revival is the desire for churches around the world and in America. From Lou Engel's The Call to the 2016 Azusa Street Revival in L.A. and the United Cry Tour in Washington, D.C. to Burlington, North Carolina, God poured out His Spirit there at a massive tent revival. It happened last June, beginning first at Burlington's New Hope Baptist Church and lasted several weeks. People were healed, prayers were answered, and more than 500 people gave their life to the Lord. One man whose life was changed thanks his little girl's prayers.
I haven't been in church in over 11 years until 5.5 weeks ago. And every Sunday and Wednesday, my daughter would go down to the altar and pray for Daddy and Mama to get saved. God answered that little girl's prayer. I believe it with all my heart.
Amen. Social media played a big role in getting more than 5,000 people to attend.
Finds her missing cat.
What do you do now?
take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
And David, just take a look behind me. There is so much rebuilding to be done here, but everyone here tells us what's most important are lives, and they want all of those missing to be found safe. David?
Gio, thank you. And in the West tonight, flood watches for the California.
The missing in the rubble, the massive devastation seen from the sky. From Mississippi to Georgia, 30 reported tornadoes over the weekend. One of the hardest hit areas, Albany, Georgia.
I think that's a tornado.
A tornado barreling through, leaving at least 4 dead. And still missing tonight, a 2-year-old who officials say was swept away during the tornado.
We have a lot of people that
coast and winter weather advisories in at least 11 states. Days of heavy rain causing this mudslide in L.A., a piece of the hill right there, sliding down toward that car, moving it right into the street. Flash flooding in the hills east of the city, washing away this truck. Rescuers floating a raft over to it. The couple inside climbed.
A Christian university in Mississippi was also hit hard by those devastating tornadoes. William Carey University
have been separated from their families, that have no homes, no food, no warmth, and no hope.
It happened so fast. All you heard was shh, and then the noise, and then everything just started coming down.
At least 20 people killed across the South. But in the midst of this nightmare, perhaps one bright moment. Your kitten was missing? Lashery Richards.
And now to the major tornado outbreak in the Deep South. 30 reported twisters from Louisiana to South Carolina. At least 20 people killed, thousands of homes destroyed. One twister ripping through parts of Georgia, stripping the trees here, overturning homes. An hour away, this woman and her baby walking through the wreckage of a farm. ABC's Gio Benitez is in Georgia tonight.
Tonight, a desperate search